The police officer's hand was on his radio, and the woman was crying. No, wailing, pointing at me like I'd just shattered her entire world. "He refused to feed my children," she screamed. "They're starving, and he kicked us out." 30 minutes earlier, I'd been flipping burgers and humming along to the Lunch Rush radio. Now I was standing in my own restaurant parking lot, apron still on, watching squad cars pull up while neighboring shop owners pressed their faces against their windows. And the worst part? I still wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing. Let me back up. I'm Marcus, and I've been running Marco's Family Kitchen for 15 years. 15 years of 4 a.m. prep shifts, burns on my forearms that never quite heal, and profit margins so thin I've gone months without paying myself. But I've also had 15 years of watching kids grow up at my tables, of couples getting engaged over my lasagna, of regulars who've become family. This place isn't just a business, it's every sacrifice I've ever made, every dream I've ever had, served up on a plate. That Tuesday started like any other. The lunch crowd was light. I was in the kitchen, lost in the rhythm of the grill, when I heard the bell above the door chime. She walked in with 3 kids trailing behind her, 2 boys and a girl, none of them older than 9 or 10. And God, those kids looked tired. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from instability, from not knowing where your next meal is coming from watching your parents struggle and being too young to help. The girl's jacket was 2 sizes too small. The boys shared a pair of sneakers that had seen better days. And their mother, the woman I'd later only be able to think of as Karen, though that feels too simple now, had this look in her eyes. Desperate, determined, like she'd already decided how this was going to go. "We need a table for 4, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Something felt off. You know that prickle on the back of your neck when the universe is about to test you? I felt it then. But I smiled anyway, grabbed 4 menus, and led them to a booth by the window. "Take your time," I said, setting down the menus. "Can I get you folks started with some water?" The kids' eyes lit up at the word water, like I'd offered them liquid gold. That should have been my second warning. She ordered big. Chicken tenders for the kids, a burger for herself, sides, drinks, the works. I remember feeling relieved, even a little guilty for my suspicion. Maybe she'd just gotten paid. Maybe things were looking up for them. Maybe I was just tired and reading too much into hungry kids and a stressed mom. I made those meals with extra care. Extra fries, bigger portions. I even threw in a slice of apple pie for the table, on the house. When I brought the food out, those kids dove in like they hadn't eaten in days. Maybe they hadn't. The mother ate slower, watching them, and something about her expression made my chest tight. Pride, maybe, or shame, or both. They cleaned every plate. And then she asked for the manager. "That's me," I said, walking over with the check. "Everything okay?" She looked at the bill. $47.83, then looked up at me, and that desperate look in her eyes had sharpened into something else, something harder. "I can't pay for this," she said simply. My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry? I don't have any money." She said it louder this time, making sure nearby tables could hear. "I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd help us. My kids were starving." The restaurant went quiet. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "you ordered all this food knowing you couldn't pay?" "My kids needed to eat," her voice cracked. "What was I supposed to do? Let them starve? What kind of person are you?" And just like that, I was the villain. I looked at those 3 kids, their faces smeared with ketchup, their bellies finally full, and I felt my resolve waver. $47. That's what stood between me being compassionate and me being cruel. That's what stood between me keeping the lights on this month or falling behind again. "I understand things are hard," I said quietly, "but I can't just give away food. This is my livelihood. I have bills too." So you're going to call the cops on a mother and her hungry children? She was standing now, voice rising. You're going to have me arrested for trying to feed my kids? I'm not calling anyone, I said. But you ordered this food. You have to pay for it or we need to work something out. Work something out? She laughed bitterly. You mean like washing dishes? You want my children to work off a debt because you won't show basic human decency? People were staring. I could feel their judgment like heat on my skin. That's when she pulled out her phone. Fine, she said. If you won't do the right thing, maybe the police will make you. And she dialed 911. In that moment, watching her perform distress into the phone, watching those kids shrink in their seats, watching 15 years of my life about to be reduced to a viral video titled "Heartless Restaurant Owner Refuses to Feed Starving Children," I realized something. Some battles aren't about food at all. They're about boundaries, about weaponized compassion, about the fine line between helping someone and being manipulated, about how doing the right thing sometimes looks nothing like what you imagined it would. The police arrived 6 minutes later, and what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about justice, mercy, and the story people tell themselves to survive. If you've ever been made to feel guilty for having boundaries, if you've ever questioned whether you were the villain in someone else's story, if you've ever wondered where compassion ends and self-destruction begins, this story will shake you. Hit that like button if you want to know what the police said when they arrived. Drop a comment with your gut reaction right now. Was I wrong? And subscribe because the truth of what happened after the camera showed up will leave you speechless. The officer's nameplate read Chen. I fixated on it because looking at Karen's tear-streaked face was becoming physically painful. She'd always been a decent actress. I just hadn't known I was auditioning for the role of villain in her one-woman show. "Officer, he starved my children," she sobbed, and I watched her fold into herself with the kind of practiced devastation that comes from years of survival. The kids stood behind her like props, their confusion genuine even if hers wasn't. They didn't understand why Mommy was crying. They'd just eaten the best meal they'd had in weeks. Officer Chen looked at me with that particular brand of exhaustion cops develop after seeing humanity at its worst. "Sir, what's your side?" My side? As if there were only two sides to this story. As if everything wasn't fractured into 1,000 jagged pieces of right and wrong that would cut you no matter how carefully you tried to pick them up. "She ordered $47 worth of food," I said, my voice flat, "ate all of it, then told me she had no money and expected me to just let her walk out. Because my children were hungry." Karen's voice pitched into that register that makes everyone within earshot flinch. "I'm a single mother. I'm doing my best, and he treated us like criminals." I wanted to scream that she was the one who called the police, not me, that I'd offered to work something out, that I'd given them extra fries and free pie because those kids looked like they needed someone to care. But Chen was already looking at me like I was the guy who kicks puppies for fun. "How much does she owe?" Chen asked. $47.83. He pulled out his wallet. My stomach lurched. "Officer, you don't have to." "I'm not letting you arrest a mother over $50, he said. And I realized with sick clarity that this was how the story would be told. Generous cop saves family from heartless restaurant owner. I'd be the villain in his story too. He handed me $50. "Keep the change." Karen's tears dried up like someone had flipped a switch. She gathered her kids, shot me one last look of triumph mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe? Or recognition of a fellow survivor doing what they had to do, and walked out. The lunch crowd that remained wouldn't meet my eyes. I heard whispers. Imagine calling the cops on kids. She was clearly desperate. What kind of person? I wanted to tell them I hadn't called anyone. I wanted to explain about the 3 other times this month I'd comped meals I couldn't afford. I wanted them to understand that compassion isn't infinite when you're barely surviving yourself. But I just stood there, $50 in my hand that wasn't even mine, watching my reputation crumble like day-old bread. Officer Chen paused at the door. "Get a sign that says payments required before ordering. Might save you trouble." After he left, I locked the front door, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. The lunch rush was over anyway, and I couldn't bear another pair of judging eyes. I sat in the empty restaurant I'd built from nothing, surrounded by 15 years of memories that suddenly felt fragile, and wondered when exactly I'd become the kind of man who could deny food to hungry children. The answer, I realized, was that I'd always been that man. I just never had to prove it before. I didn't open the restaurant the next day, or the day after that. I told myself I was doing inventory, catching up on paperwork, deep cleaning the kitchen. All lies. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. I was hiding. My phone had become a weapon. 37 missed calls, twice that many texts, most from the local Facebook group where someone had posted about the incident. Marco's Kitchen refused to feed starving children. The post had 200 shares and counting. The comments were a dumpster fire of righteous fury. Capitalism at its worst. Imagine being so heartless. I'll never eat there again. 3 people had tagged the local news. 1 had started an online petition to shut me down. The petition had 400 signatures. I scrolled through my camera roll to distract myself and landed on a photo from 5 years ago. My daughter, Elena, sitting in the restaurant's corner booth doing homework. She was 12 then, gap-toothed and beautiful, so proud of her daddy's restaurant that she'd bring friends after school just to show off. That booth was where she'd told me she hated me for choosing this place over her mother, where she'd celebrated her 16th birthday 3 months before the accident, where I'd sat alone after her funeral, unable to cry, unable to breathe, unable to understand how the universe could take the only thing I'd ever loved more than this restaurant. The business was supposed to be my legacy for her. Now it was just my prison. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered before I could stop myself. "Is this Marcus Rivera?" A woman's voice, professional, slightly bored. "Yes." "I'm calling from Child Protective Services. We received a complaint about an incident at your establishment involving 3 minor children who were denied food. I need to ask you some questions." My blood went cold. I didn't deny them food. They ate a full meal. Their mother ordered without having money to pay. "So you admit you demanded payment from indigent minors?" What? "No, I asked their mother to pay. She's the one who called the police." The woman's sigh was audible. "Mr. Rivera, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've heard every excuse. What I need to know is whether you have a pattern of discriminating against impoverished families." "I gave them free pie," I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. "I made extra portions because those kids looked hungry. I was trying to help." "That's not what the mother said in her complaint. She says you humiliated her in front of her children and other customers, made her feel like a criminal for being poor." And there it was. Karen had gotten ahead of the story. She wasn't just the victim now, she was the whistleblower protecting other families from my cruelty. "Are you going to investigate me?" I asked. "We investigate all complaints. Someone will be in touch." She hung up. I sat in the dark restaurant, surrounded by empty tables and chairs that suddenly felt like tombstones, and understood with perfect clarity that Karen hadn't just stolen a meal. She'd stolen my credibility, my reputation, my future. The worst part? She probably had to. Maybe that's what survival looks like when the system fails you. You take what you can from whoever has it, and you don't look back. I just wished it didn't have to be me. I spent the next morning doing what people do when their lives fall apart. I looked for evidence that I wasn't a monster. Bank statements, donation receipts, anything that proved I'd helped people. The folder was thicker than I expected. 3 years of comped meals, documented with notes. Family of 4, father just lost job, $67 waived. Elderly woman, forgot purse, $23 comped. Teenager, obviously homeless, free sandwich and coffee, didn't ring up. I'd given away thousands of dollars I couldn't afford. But none of it mattered now because I'd said no once to the wrong person on the wrong day in front of the wrong audience. There was a photo tucked between receipts. Elena, at 14, wearing my too big chef's coat, making pancakes during a slow Sunday morning. She'd burned half of them, but her smile was incandescent. "I'm gonna run this place someday, Dad," she'd said, "and I'll be better at it than you." She would have been. She was kinder than me, smarter. She would have figured out how to help Karen without destroying herself in the process. I heard the front door rattle. Through the glass, I saw a woman with a camera and a man holding a microphone. Local news. I ducked below the counter like a coward, heart hammering, until they finally left. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert, my landlord. "We need to talk about rent. Call me." I knew what that meant. 3 months behind already. The viral post meant empty tables, and empty tables meant no money, and no money meant eviction. The death spiral had started. Another buzz. This one from my ex-wife, Patricia. "Saw the video. Is it true? Did you really refuse to feed children? Elena would be ashamed." That one carved me open. Because she was right. Elena would be ashamed. My daughter, who'd inherited her mother's bleeding heart, who'd once cried for an hour over a dead bird she found in the parking lot, who believed people were fundamentally good, she would have taken one look at those kids and given them everything. But Elena had died with her principles intact. She'd never had to choose between compassion and survival. She'd never learned that sometimes being good isn't enough when being good makes you homeless. I wanted to call Patricia back and explain. Tell her that I'd tried, that I'd given them pie, that Karen had weaponized my kindness. But Patricia had left me 3 years ago because I chose the restaurant over fixing our marriage. She'd warned me then that this place would consume me, that I'd wake up one day and realize I'd sacrificed everything human about myself to keep it alive. She'd been right about that, too. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes and empty tables. I remembered the day we'd signed a lease. Patricia had been 8 months pregnant, and we'd stood right here, imagining our future. A family business, something to pass down, something that meant we'd matter. Now it was just a room full of furniture and regret. I pulled out my laptop and started drafting a response to post online. An explanation, a defense, anything to stop the bleeding. But every sentence sounded like excuses. I was struggling too. I've helped so many people. She ordered knowing she couldn't pay. All true, all irrelevant. The story had already been written. I was the villain. Explanations wouldn't change that. Have you ever been in a situation where telling your side of the story wouldn't matter? Where the truth became irrelevant because people had already decided who you were? The woman from CPS showed up on Thursday. Her name was Diana Foster, and she had the look of someone who'd seen enough human misery to fill an ocean. She sat across from me in the empty restaurant, notepad open, face carefully neutral. "Walk me through what happened," she said. I told her everything. The desperate look in Karen's eyes, the too small jacket, the way the kids' faces lit up at water, how I'd given them extra portions, the free pie, her refusal to pay, the phone call, the police, Officer Chen's $50 that I'd tried to refuse. Diana wrote it all down, her pen scratching across paper in a rhythm that sounded like judgment. "Do you have security cameras?" she asked. I nodded and pulled up the footage on my laptop. We watched in silence. Karen entering with the kids, the meal, the check, the confrontation, her pulling out her phone. All of it captured in grainy black and white video that somehow made me look worse. The camera angle made me seem larger, more intimidating. Karen looked smaller, more vulnerable. "She ordered knowing she couldn't pay," I said, pointing at the screen. "You can see it. The way she avoids eye contact. She'd already decided." "Maybe," Diana said. "Or maybe she was desperate and hoped you'd take pity. That's not a crime." "Neither is asking for payment." "No," she agreed, "but it's also not good optics. A grown man demanding money from a mother with hungry children." So what was I supposed to do? Let everyone eat free? Go bankrupt showing compassion I can't afford? Diana closed her notepad. "Mr. Rivera, I'm not here to judge your financial decisions. I'm here to determine if those children were in danger. And based on this footage, they weren't. They ate. They weren't threatened or harmed. You didn't call the police on them. She did." Relief washed over me. "So you'll clear me?" "Of child endangerment? Yes, but that's not the same as being innocent in the court of public opinion." She stood to leave, then paused. "Can I give you some advice? Off the record?" I nodded. "This wasn't about you. That woman was drowning, and you were a life raft she grabbed without asking. Maybe she shouldn't have. Maybe it wasn't fair. But drowning people don't care about fair. They care about surviving." "And what about me?" The question came out harder than I intended. "I'm drowning too. I've been drowning for 3 years, but nobody's writing viral posts about helping me." Diana's expression softened with something like pity. "No," she said quietly, "they're not." After she left, I sat with that truth. The world had decided that some drowning mattered more than others. Karen's poverty was visible, sympathetic, shareable. My struggle was invisible, because I owned a business, because I was a man, because my pain didn't photograph well. I thought about Elena again. 3 years ago, she'd been texting while driving. Such a stupid, preventable thing. She died instantly, they said. I hoped that was true. I couldn't bear imagining her suffering. Patricia had wanted to sue the phone company, the car manufacturer, someone, anyone. But I couldn't, because it was Elena's fault. My baby girl had made one careless choice, and it cost her everything. Just like I'd made one choice that seemed right at the time, asking for payment, and it was costing me everything too. Maybe that's what life was, a series of small decisions that seem reasonable until they destroy you. Karen deciding to order food she couldn't afford. Me deciding to enforce a boundary. Both of us drowning in different ways. Both of us trying to survive. The problem was there weren't enough life rafts for everyone, and the person who grabbed first got to be the victim. Friday morning, I opened the restaurant out of spite more than hope. If I was going down, I'd do it on my feet. The first hour was predictably empty. The second hour brought Margaret Wu, an 83-year-old woman who'd been eating lunch here every Friday for 11 years. She walked in with her cane, settled into her usual booth, and ordered the same thing she always did: chicken noodle soup and chamomile tea. "You're still open," she said, like it was a question. "For now." She studied me with those sharp eyes that had seen everything from the Cultural Revolution to the Trump presidency. I read about what happened. That woman, the police. Here it comes, I thought, another person telling me what a monster I am. "She tried the same thing at Chen's Bakery last month," Margaret said. "Ordered a custom birthday cake, let her kids eat half of it at the shop, then claimed she'd left her wallet in the car. Never came back. Mrs. Chen filed a police report, but nothing happened." My hands stilled on the table. "Are you serious?" "Third time I know of. There was an incident at the pharmacy too. Filled prescriptions, claimed insurance would cover it, never paid. People are scared to speak up because she makes scenes, threatens to report them for discrimination." The room tilted. Why didn't anyone warn me? Margaret sighed. Because she has kids, because she's poor, because calling out a struggling mother makes you the villain no matter what she's done. It's easier to absorb the loss than fight it. But I can't absorb it, I said, hearing the desperation crack through. I'm 3 months behind on rent. The viral post killed my business. I'm going to lose everything. I know, Margaret said gently. That's why I'm here, to tell you you're not crazy. You're not cruel. You're just the one who finally said no. Something broke open in my chest. All week I'd been drowning in doubt, wondering if I was the villain everyone claimed. But Margaret's words were a lifeline. You're not crazy. She reached across the table and patted my hand with her papery fingers. My husband owned a grocery store for 40 years. People stole from him constantly. Small things mostly. Bread, milk, baby formula. He never reported anyone because he said hunger wasn't a crime. But one day, someone stole the week's receipts right out of the register. $3,000. We almost lost the store. What did he do? He got a better safe. And he learned that compassion without boundaries is just slow suicide. I made Margaret's soup myself, extra careful, extra warm. When I brought it to her table, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You remind me of him, she said, my husband. He died still believing people were fundamentally good. Even after everything, he believed that. It killed him a little every day, but he wouldn't let go of it. I'm not sure I believe that anymore, I admitted. Good, she said. Maybe you'll survive then. After Margaret left, I sat in the empty restaurant and thought about her words. Compassion without boundaries is slow suicide. Elena had had no boundaries. She'd believed everyone deserved help, second chances, infinite forgiveness. And maybe in a better world, that would work. But we didn't live in that world. We lived in a world where survival meant knowing when to say no, where being good got you destroyed, where the person who grabbed the life raft first got to write the story about how they earned it. My phone buzzed. A 1-star review. Owner refused to feed starving children. Disgusting human being. I didn't delete it. I just added it to the collection. Evidence of my villainy. Proof that I'd survived by choosing myself over others. Maybe that did make me a monster. But at least I'd be a monster with a roof over my head. Is it wrong to protect yourself when helping someone else might destroy you? Where's the line between selfishness and self-preservation? The weekend brought exactly 3 customers. By Monday morning, I was out of coffee because I couldn't afford to restock. By Tuesday, the gas company sent a disconnection notice. Wednesday, I sat in the dark restaurant, literally dark because I'd turned off half the lights to save money, and calculated how many days I had left before complete collapse. 17. Maybe 20 if I sold my car. My phone rang. Patricia again. I almost didn't answer. I'm sorry, she said before I could speak, about the text, about what I said. That was cruel. But accurate. A long pause. Marcus, I didn't call to fight. I called because I found something. Elena's journal, from right before she died. My throat closed. I don't want to know. She wrote about the restaurant, about you. She was so proud, Marcus. She understood why you worked so hard, why it mattered. She wasn't ashamed. I was wrong to say that. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. There's an entry from 3 days before the accident, Patricia continued, her voice thick. She wrote, Dad gave away another meal today to a family who couldn't pay. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. He always does the right thing, even when it costs him. That's the kind of person I want to be. The tears came then, sudden and brutal. 3 years of grief I'd been holding back because I didn't have time to fall apart. I had a business to run, bills to pay, a legacy to protect. But the legacy was ash now. The business was dying. And my daughter, My beautiful, kind daughter had died thinking I was someone worth admiring. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you need to hear it. Because you're not a villain, Marcus. You're just exhausted and broke and grieving, and you made one decision that looked bad to people who don't know the whole story. But Elena knew. She saw who you really were." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and finally looked at the video that had gone viral. Someone had recorded Karen's confrontation on their phone and posted it with the caption, "Restaurant owner calls cops on poor family." It had 3 million views. The comments were a wasteland of human cruelty. "Hope his business burns down." "Someone should feed him to the hungry." "White male privilege in action." That last one would have been funny if it weren't so maddening. I was Cuban American, but to the internet mob, details didn't matter. I was the villain, so everything about me must be villainous. They'd constructed an entire identity for me based on one 90-second video. I watched it again, studying my face. I looked tired, frustrated, but not cruel, not hateful, just defeated. A man who'd been pushed too far and finally pushed back. The me in that video was a stranger. Or maybe he was the real me, and the man I thought I was, generous, compassionate, good, had always been the stranger. Maybe we only discover who we really are when we're forced to choose between principles and survival. I'd chosen survival. Elena had died before she had to make that choice. My phone buzzed again. An email from Robert, my landlord. "Marcus, I need 3 months back rent by Friday or I have to start eviction proceedings. I'm sorry. I've given you all the time I can." 4 days. I had 4 days to produce $6,000 I didn't have. I thought about calling Patricia back, asking for a loan, but she'd helped me too many times already. After Elena died, she'd covered 2 months of rent while I was too destroyed to work. She'd paid for the funeral I couldn't afford. She'd given and given until finally she had to leave because I was drowning her too. Everyone had a limit. Even love had boundaries, especially love. I looked around the restaurant one last time, really looked at it. The booth where Elena did homework, the kitchen where I'd taught her to make pancakes, the counter where she'd sat on her 10th birthday, spinning on the stool and laughing. This place was supposed to be forever, our legacy, proof that we'd existed and mattered. Instead, it was a tomb. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor, a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Richard Castellano. He wanted to buy the restaurant. "I want to buy the restaurant." "I represent a development group," he said, spreading papers across a table. "We're acquiring properties in this district. Your location is perfect for what we're planning." "What are you planning?" "High-end condos, boutique retail. The neighborhood's gentrifying. In 5 years, this street will be unrecognizable." I looked at the offer. $45,000. Enough to pay off my debts with something left over. Enough to start again somewhere else, somehow. "The building's worth more than that," I said automatically. Richard smiled. "In a different situation, yes. But you're 3 months behind on rent, you're about to be evicted, and your reputation," he trailed off delicately. "The viral incident has devalued the business significantly. I'm actually being generous." He was right. I had no leverage, no options. Just desperation and 17 days until complete collapse. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow at 5. After that, the offer expires. There are other properties." After he left, I sat with the papers, feeling the weight of inevitability. This was how it ended. Not with a fight, not with dignity, just with a signature on a contract, selling the last piece of Elena to a developer who'd turn it into luxury apartments for people who'd never have to choose between compassion and survival. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Is this Marcus Rivera?" A different voice this time, male, younger. Yes, I'm calling from the Riverside Gazette. We're doing a follow-up story on the incident at your restaurant. The woman, Karen Mitchell, she's been arrested for welfare fraud. Turns out she's been running similar scams across 3 counties. We'd like to interview you. The world tilted. She was arrested? This morning, someone from Chen's Bakery saw your video and came forward with security footage from her own incident. Then others started reporting similar experiences. The district attorney is building a case. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. The thing is, the reporter continued, your story is getting traction now. People are realizing you were set up. There's a GoFundMe someone started for your restaurant. It's raised $8,000 in 2 days. $8,000? More than enough to pay Robert. Enough to survive another month. Who started it? Someone named Margaret Wu. Says she's a regular customer. She posted the security footage from your restaurant showing the whole interaction. Public opinion is shifting. Margaret, 83-year-old Margaret Wu had done what I couldn't. Fight back. So, will you do the interview? The reporter asked. Tell your side of the story? I looked at Richard's offer. $45,000 to walk away. Start over somewhere no one knew my name or my story. Or I could stay and fight, take the interview, accept the GoFundMe money. Let strangers' charity save me the same way Karen had tried to make me save her. Can I call you back? I hung up and sat in the silence. Elena's booth, Elena's kitchen, Elena's dream. But Elena was dead, and dreams didn't pay rent. Patricia had said Elena understood why the restaurant mattered. But did she? Or had she just been a kid who loved her dad and wanted to make him feel better about his choices? My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. GoFundMe hit $10,000. People want to help. Let them. But accepting help meant staying, meant fighting, meant more interviews, more scrutiny, more chances for everything to fall apart again. It meant choosing to survive in a system that had nearly destroyed me. Selling meant freedom, a clean break, an ending. Both choices felt like different kinds of death. I picked up Richard's offer and read it again. $45,000 to become nobody in a city where nobody knew what I'd done or who I'd failed to be. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the restaurant and remembered. Elena at 6, standing on a stool to help me stir pasta sauce, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Elena at 12, rolling her eyes when I made her practice knife skills with carrots. Elena at 16, telling me about the boy she liked while pretending to organize menus. Every memory happened here, in this building, at these tables. This wasn't just a business, it was the museum of my daughter's life. The only place she still existed. How could I sell that for $45,000? But how could I not? The GoFundMe money was charity, pity donations from strangers who felt guilty for condemning me. Accepting it meant living on mercy, the same thing I denied Karen. Wasn't that hypocrisy? At dawn, I made my decision. I called Richard Castellano. I'll sell, but I need $50,000. A pause. That's not the offer. It is now. Take it or leave it. Another pause. Fine, I'll have contracts ready by noon. Then I called the reporter. I'll do the interview, but on my terms. I want to talk about Karen too, about why she did it, about how the system fails everyone. That's not the story people want, he said carefully. Then they can watch another video of someone yelling, I'm done performing. The interview happened at 2 o'clock. The reporter, a woman named Jessica Park, set up a camera while I made coffee I'd bought with the last of my cash. Tell me what happened, she said. I told her everything. The meal, the confrontation, the police. But I also told her about the 3 other families I'd fed for free that month. About going months without paying myself. About Elena. about Patricia leaving because the restaurant consumed everything, about being 3 months behind on rent when Karen walked in. I'm not saying what she did was right, I said, looking directly at the camera, but I understand why she did it. When you're drowning, you grab whatever's in reach. I was drowning too. We were both drowning. The difference is her poverty was visible and mine wasn't. Jessica leaned forward. So you don't blame her? I blame a system that makes us fight each other for scraps while pretending it's about morality. Karen needed food, I needed payment. We were both right, we were both wrong, and neither of us should have been in that position in the first place. What about the arrest? She defrauded multiple businesses. Yeah, she did, and that's on her. But you know what else is on her? 3 kids she's raising alone. No support system, no safety net. I'm not excusing fraud, but I'm also not going to pretend I understand what it's like to watch your children go hungry. Jessica clicked off the camera. That's not going to make everyone happy. People want a villain. Then they can pick someone else. I'm tired. The interview aired that evening. The response was mixed. Some people said I was too soft on Karen. Others said I was finally showing humanity. Most just moved on to the next outrage. I met Richard at 4 o'clock to sign the papers. His pen was expensive. Everything about him was expensive. He handed me a check for $50,000 like it was nothing. What are you going to do with the space? I asked. Does it matter? No, I guess it doesn't. I shook his hand and walked out of Marco's family kitchen for the last time. Didn't look back. Couldn't. That night, I sat in my apartment, also rented, also temporary, also not really mine, and stared at the check. $50,000. Enough to start over, not enough to forget. Patricia texted, "Saw the interview. Elena would be proud. I'm proud." Margaret texted, "You did good, kid. Hard choices, but good." I didn't feel good. I felt hollowed out, empty, like I'd amputated a part of myself and was expected to be grateful for the cauterization. But I'd survived. Karen would survive too, probably. She'd serve her time, get out, keep hustling, because that's what survival looked like for people like her. And I'd take my $50,000 and find another town, another restaurant, another version of myself that hadn't failed so publicly. Maybe that was enough. Maybe survival was all any of us got. 3 weeks later, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, looking at a space for lease. Smaller than Marco's, cheaper rent, a town where nobody knew my name or my story. The realtor was enthusiastic. Great location, foot traffic's excellent. Previous tenant was a coffee shop that moved to a bigger space. Good sign for the neighborhood. I nodded, not really listening. The space was fine. They were all fine. What did it matter? "I'll take it," I said. She blinked. "Don't you want to see the kitchen first?" "Sure, yeah, let's see it." The kitchen was adequate. That was the word that kept coming to mind. Adequate. Not Elena's kitchen. Not the kitchen where I'd taught her to make pancakes. Just a kitchen. 4 walls and some appliances. I signed another lease, started another restaurant, named it something forgettable, Riverside Grill, because I couldn't bear to attach my name to anything anymore. The first week was slow. The second week was slower. By the third week, I realized I didn't care. I'd show up, cook meals, serve customers, go home, repeat. The fire that had driven me for 15 years was gone. A woman came in one afternoon with her daughter. The kid was maybe 7, gap-toothed and chatty. She ordered pancakes and asked if she could watch me cook them. "Sure," I said, and let her stand by the kitchen window. She narrated every step like it was magic. "Now he's flipping it. Mom, look, he flipped it really high." Her joy was incandescent, pure. For just a moment, I saw Elena, really saw her. Not the memory I'd been carrying like a wound, but the real her. The kid who'd found wonder in everything, who'd believed people were good, who died before the world taught her otherwise. The little girl's mother tried to shush her, embarrassed. "Sorry, she's obsessed with cooking shows." "It's fine," I said, and meant it. I made those pancakes with more care than I'd made anything since leaving Virginia. Extra chocolate chips, a smiley face in whipped cream. When I brought them out, the kid's face lit up. "These are the best pancakes ever!" They weren't. They were adequate, but her joy made them magic anyway. After they left, I stood in the empty restaurant and felt something shift. Not healing, I wasn't naive enough to call it that, but maybe the beginning of whatever comes after survival. The space where you're not drowning anymore, but you're not really swimming either. You're just floating, treading water, waiting to see if the current carries you somewhere worth going. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Karen Mitchell sentenced to 18 months probation, ordered to pay restitution to affected businesses. 18 months probation. Not prison, not devastation, just consequences and a chance to start over. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe that was justice. Maybe there wasn't a difference anymore. I thought about calling Margaret, updating her. But what would I say? I'm adequate now? I survived. Isn't that enough? Instead, I opened my laptop and looked at photos. Elena's first birthday. Elena starting kindergarten. Elena in her too big chef's coat. Elena the day before she died, texting me a photo of her acceptance letter to culinary school. She'd wanted to study in Paris, learn from the best, come back and transform Marco's family kitchen into something extraordinary. She'd had plans, dreams, a future that stretched out bright and infinite. And I'd let it all go for $50,000 and a fresh start in a town where nobody cared. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the only way to honor her wasn't to build monuments or preserve museums. Maybe it was just to keep doing, keep cooking, keep showing up, keep finding moments of magic in adequate pancakes and gap-toothed kids who still believed the world was good. Maybe survival was the monument. Maybe breathing was enough. 6 months into Asheville, the restaurant was breaking even. Not thriving, not dying, just existing, like me. And somehow, that was enough. I hired a kid named Tommy who reminded me of myself at 20, all raw ambition and belief that hard work mattered. He asked questions constantly. Why this temperature? Why that technique? Why did I add sugar to the tomato sauce? Cuts the acidity, I explained, makes it smoother. My abuela does that too, he said, grinning. She says cooking is chemistry plus love. I almost laughed. Love? I'd forgotten that was part of the equation. Margaret called one Thursday evening. How's exile treating you? It's not exile, it's a fresh start. Same thing, different marketing. She paused. I wanted you to know, someone bought your old building, turned it into affordable housing. 12 units, rent-controlled. My chest tightened. I thought it was going to be luxury condos. Developers sold it to a nonprofit after the city council meeting got ugly. Turns out your interview made people pay attention to how gentrification works. They fought back. Won. So Richard didn't get his condos? Nope. And 12 families have homes now, including Karen, actually. She applied after her sentencing. They accepted her. I sat with that information. The restaurant I'd sold to survive had become something that helped people survive. Not in the way I'd imagined, not through meals or memories, but through walls and roofs and a chance to stop drowning. That's good, I said finally. You sound surprised. I guess I thought selling meant destroying something, but maybe it just meant letting it become something else. Margaret's laugh was warm. Look at you, getting philosophical in your old age. After we hung up, I thought about Elena's journal entry. He always does the right thing, even when it costs him. But I hadn't done the right thing. I'd done the surviving thing. And somehow, accidentally, it had turned into something right anyway. Maybe that was the secret. You couldn't always choose between good and survival. Sometimes you just chose survival and hoped the universe found a way to make it mean something. The next morning, a family came in for breakfast. Mom, Dad, 3 kids. The youngest couldn't have been more than 4. When I brought their pancakes, the dad pulled me aside. "My son has a dairy allergy," he said quietly. "I forgot to mention it when we ordered. Is there milk in these?" There was, butter in the batter. But I'd made extra pancakes that morning, testing a new recipe, dairy-free. They were sitting in the warmer. "Let me remake his," I said. "We can pay for both," the dad said quickly. "Don't worry about it. Mistakes happen." I brought out the dairy-free pancake, shaped like a dinosaur, because I had time and the kid looked anxious. When I set it down, his whole face transformed. "A T-Rex!" he shrieked. "Dad, look, it's a T-Rex!" The dad's eyes met mine over his son's head. Gratitude, relief. The look of a parent who'd been bracing for disappointment and got magic instead. "Thank you," he mouthed. I nodded and went back to the kitchen. Tommy was watching. "You didn't charge him for the remake," he observed. "No. Why not? We're not exactly rolling in money." I thought about Karen, about Officer Chen's $50, about Margaret's GoFundMe, about how many times someone had given me grace I didn't deserve and judgment I didn't earn. "Because sometimes you can afford to be kind," I said, "and when you can, you should be." Tommy considered this. "What about when you can't?" "Then you do your best and forgive yourself for not being infinite." He nodded slowly. "Your daughter teach you that?" "No," I said. "She taught me the opposite, but I'm learning anyway." That night, I closed the restaurant and stood outside looking at the sign. Riverside Grill. Generic. Forgettable. Nothing like Marco's family kitchen. But inside, there were tables where families ate together. A kitchen where Tommy was learning to cook. Walls that would hold new memories for people I'd never meet. It wasn't a monument to Elena. It was just a restaurant. And maybe that was better. Maybe monuments were just ways to avoid moving forward. Maybe the real way to honor the dead wasn't to preserve what was, but to keep creating what could be. I took out my phone and opened my photos. Elena's smile looked back at me. 16 years old, forever. Too young to understand that survival sometimes meant compromise, that love sometimes meant letting go, that doing your best was enough even when it wasn't perfect. "I'm trying, baby girl," I whispered to the photo. "I'm trying." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and possibility. Somewhere in Virginia, 12 families were sleeping in apartments that used to be my restaurant. Somewhere, Karen was figuring out how to rebuild after consequences. Somewhere, Margaret was probably watching game shows and drinking tea and being exactly who she'd always been. And here I was, still breathing, still cooking, still figuring out where compassion ended and survival began. Still learning that maybe they weren't opposites at all. Maybe they were just different routes to the same destination. Tomorrow, and the day after, and the one after that. For now, that was enough. This is what I've learned. Life doesn't give you heroes and villains. It gives you exhausted people making impossible choices and hoping they land on the right side of history. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Usually, they land somewhere in between, in that gray space where judgment looks different depending on which angle you're standing. I don't know if I was right to ask Karen for payment. I don't know if she was wrong to demand I feed her kids for free. What I know is we were both drowning, and the world watched us fight over a life raft instead of building more boats. But I'm still here, still cooking, still trying to figure out how to be good in a world that doesn't always reward goodness. And if you've made it this far in my story, maybe you're trying to figure out the same thing. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of your own impossible choices, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between helping someone and protecting yourself. And subscribe, because we all need reminders that survival doesn't make us villains. It just makes us human. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not judging too quickly. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the right thing and the surviving thing aren't the same, and that's okay. We're all just doing our best. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.